Virgil van Dijk is the best centre-back on the planet right now, easy.
Yeah, I go further. I think he's the best centre-half of all time.
Van Dijk versus Vidic has become the most debated player comparison over the last 5 years. Who's better overall? Who had the better prime? Let's talk about both players. And let me explain to you why the Van Dijk versus Vidic debate is even more stupid than you thought. Before I do, I'd love to ask you to please subscribe and let us know in the comments what other videos you'd love to see us make like this. Now, let's rewind back to 2006. At the start, Vidic had a rocky first 6 months at United. He arrived mid-season and took some time to get used to the league. This period of time is now used across the league as the example of why you should be patient with new signings. Even Vidic took some time to settle in before turning things around, people will say. And oh, what a turnaround it was.
Thank you.
Alongside Rio Ferdinand, he formed the most revered defensive partnership the league has ever seen. But I thought Terry and Carvalho had the record for the fewest goals conceded in a league campaign. That's true, but what's also true is they had Claude Makelele sitting in front of them as a holding midfielder. Rio and Vidic had Carrick and Scholes, neither of whom's primary duty was breaking up play. They never got the protection that Terry and Carvalho did, and over a 7-year period, they dominated English football. Won the Champions League, conceding just 6 times. When Liverpool won it with Van Dijk at the back, they conceded 12 times. Double. Interesting. It's at this point in a conversation with a rival fan that they will say he was part of a partnership, he couldn't have done it with a lesser player than Ferdinand next to him. And that's wrong too. In the 2010-11 season, Ferdinand played just 50% of the games in the league, meaning Vidic spent half of that league campaign guiding 23-year-old Johnny Evans or 21-year-old Chris Smalling through matches. United won the league that year by 9 points and only conceded 37 goals. Just 4 more than Liverpool conceded when they won the league in 2019. Of course, he was better when he had a better partner, it goes without saying, but to suggest he was carried is ridiculous. Vidic won 71% of the 211 Premier League games he played. This is the best win percentage out of all 383 players to have played over 200 Premier League matches. But the likes of Jamie Carragher want us to believe that Van Dijk is better than Vidic was, that no Premier League centre-back has ever had a bigger impact on a team than Van Dijk. Van Dijk is a quality centre-back and has undoubtedly been the best in the world at times, but the most impactful on a team? That's provably false. Prior to Vidic's arrival at United, we haven't won the league in 3 years. Following his arrival, we won 5 of the next 7 league titles. And in the 2 we didn't win, Vidic played less than 25 games. He was in the team of the season 4 times and named Premier League Player of the Season twice in that period also. United were at their most successful when Vidic was available. When United failed to win the league in 2009, we lost 4 of the 14 games he missed and just 2 of the 24 he played. United also won the Champions League and the Club World Cup in this time. But Carragher and many others are convinced that the most impactful centre-back of the Premier League era has won it just once out of 5 times. Nah, not for me. But they were competing with a freakishly good Pep Guardiola team. They definitely would have won 2 more in any other era. Alright, cool. Just for a second, let's take freakishly good Pep Guardiola teams out of the equation. Remember when we played Barcelona 2 times in 3 years? Nemanja Vidic, he's now got 2 more Champions Leagues and became part of the first team to ever retain the competition. You still want to take a wander down the hypothetical road? Didn't think so. I know loads of people will be shouting you can't judge Van Dijk's impact on team success. Well, firstly, that's absurd. And secondly, okay, let's take a look at some numbers and compare what are generally considered Vidic and Van Dijk's best seasons. Vidic kept more clean sheets, conceded fewer goals, won the ball more, cleared the ball away from danger more, made more tackles for his team in the last man back. Van Dijk won more aerial battles, he was also better on the ball. But much like with Trent and Gary Neville, the expectations on the centre-back role were different when Vidic played. Defending took priority over everything else, and Vidic was perfect for this. Vidic versus Van Dijk is quite frankly an odd comparison for a few reasons. The main one we'll get to in a bit, but firstly, it's an odd comparison because as players, they couldn't have been more different. Vidic was an aggressive front foot ball winning defender who would put his head, quite literally, into areas most would think twice about putting their feet. Van Dijk is a more passive defender who likes to wait for the attacker to make the first move. There was a period where he went 65 games without being dribbled past.
No one had dribbled past
Barcelona.
for like, what was it, 18 months?
Liverpool fans love to use this stat as if it's some sort of debate ender.
Pepe was the first person to get past him. And we celebrated it like a goal.
It's an impressive stat, but it requires some context. Van Dijk backs off when he's dribbled at. He's cautious and makes good use of his pace and size to delay the attacker until defensive support arrives in numbers. It's a respectable method, but one which Vidic didn't have the option of employing most of the time as the midfield he played behind was far less functional. Plus, can you really see the man who said, you can fix a broken nose, but if you let someone score a goal, you can't fix your pride, backing off and waiting for help to arrive, even if sometimes it was a safer option? Which brings us to one of the most clutched at straws in the history of football. Fernando Torres. Fernando Torres took Vidic's soul. He's still having nightmares about Torres. A top defender would never get torn apart like that. Fernando Torres scored 3 goals in 15 games against Nemanja Vidic. Torres ritually destroying Vidic is one of the biggest myths in football. Vidic was aggressive and got his distances wrong on a couple of occasions, and he was punished by a world-class striker. And people choose to remember just that one game out of the 15 they played against each other. It's a ridiculous myth that has become accepted fact by rival fans and media. An actual fact, though, is that Marcus Rashford has scored more than double Torres' tally against Vidic when he has faced Van Dijk. Awkward. And they certainly don't like to bring this up. That's 19-year-old Anthony Martial there, not Fernando Torres, who had a claim at being the best centre-forward in the league. They just continue to claim Van Dijk is the best centre-back the league has ever seen, and that's it.
Virgil van Dijk, peak of the powers, is the best defender that's ever lived.
That's the main reason comparing Van Dijk to Vidic is stupid. The next one's a head-scratcher. In an attempt to claim Van Dijk is the greatest centre-back of the Premier League era, Liverpool fans and the media are comparing him to, I'd argue, United's 3rd best centre-back in the Premier League era? It doesn't make sense. Rio Ferdinand and Jaap Stam are the best centre-backs to play for United during the Premier League era. Rio won everything Vidic did and more. Alongside Vidic, he helped United keep 24 clean sheets in the 2008 season, and United went a period of 14 league games without conceding a goal, which is still unmatched. They were named together in the PFA Team of the Year for 3 consecutive seasons, 3 years of defensive brilliance. But he was brilliant before Vidic. He won the 2002 Premier League title at the age of 24. Van Dijk was just getting ready to make the step up from Celtic to Southampton at that age. Rio was at the top of his game, winning Premier Leagues for a decade. Van Dijk just doesn't have the longevity to be in the conversation with Rio. So how can Jaap Stam, who was only at United for 3 years, be better than Van Dijk, who is currently in his 5th full season at Liverpool? He won the league title in all 3 seasons he played in England. Pretty impressive, right? Oh, and I forgot. He also won the treble in his 1st season. On top of all of this silverware, Stam was so dominant and intimidating that attackers started to avoid his area of the pitch, which led to a noticeable decrease in the number of defensive actions he was making. He was so good, players were scared to go near him. Now that I think about it, maybe people aren't so stupid for using Vidic as a comparison to Van Dijk after all. And when you consider that Stam, Rio and Vidic would have been playing in one-on-one situations far more than Van Dijk, due to most teams playing with 2 strikers at the time, the argument becomes even harder to make for Van Dijk. There's no doubting that Van Dijk has been one of the top centre-backs of his era, but Vidic was one of the best at a much stronger time for the position. He also has all of the accolades you could ever wish for to back it up, both team and individual. 5 league titles, 1 Champions League, 2 Premier League Player of the Season trophies. The truth is, it's not just Vidic who sits above Van Dijk, his teammate at the time, Rio, also does. But in an era where defending has become somewhat of a forgotten art, it's easy to see how a fan base whose best centre-back in decades was Sami Hyypiä can get carried away. Now we've set that record straight, what myth do you reckon we should bust next? Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that one.